Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an in-depth guide for the Great Olm fight in a team-based environment. This guide is designed to give you all the information you'll need to defeat the Olm with your own team, or to fit seamlessly into our viewer raids that we do on stream almost every day. We provide a positive, judgment-free platform for anyone to learn, despite their experience level. And I would like to personally invite you. The link to the stream is in the description of the video. Now let's get started. We all know Olm may be intimidating at first, but I promise when we break it down into small pieces, it is so much easier than what you think. This video is broken down into several sections to help us understand in the easiest way possible. Please feel free to navigate through these as you feel necessary. The timestamps are in the description. Let's first focus on Olm. When we first enter the room, we'll notice that it's completely empty. After a brief moment, Olm will rise randomly on either the east or west side. The Great Olm consists of 2 hands and a head. In order to defeat him, we must disable his hands over a number of phases and finally attacking the head itself. The number of phases is determined by the number of people in the raid, starting with 3 and increasing by 1 for every 8 people in the party. To progress through the fight, we must target and disable both hands. When both hands are disabled, Olm will fall for a brief intermission and reappear on the opposite side of the room. In a normal 3-phase Olm, the timing of when we disable the hands does not matter in the first 2 phases. The third or final phase, however, both hands must be disabled approximately the same time, or else the hand will regenerate back to full health. Once we have disabled both hands in the final phase, we immediately target the Olm's head to finish the kill. To prevent confusion when we refer to the individual hands, we will call them the left or right hand based on our perception when looking directly at Olm. The left hand, also known as the Mage hand, is weak to magic attacks. The right hand, which is known as the Melee hand, is weak to melee attacks. The melee hand plays a special role throughout the fight as it allows Olm to cast special attacks. We will cover these attacks later on. By dealing damage to it, the melee hand can occasionally become clinched. This state prevents Olm from conducting the special attacks, but can no longer be targeted for a short period of time, or until the mage hand has been disabled. Lastly, the head is weak to ranged attacks. The head is only vulnerable after the last phase. Dealing damage to the head beforehand will simply cause the head to heal for the damage dealt. Throughout the fight, Olm will rotate his head side to side in order to see team members that are not inside his attackable zones. As we observe the room, Olm can look in 3 directions: left, middle, or right. When Olm is looking to the right, he is able to attack anyone standing in the middle column all the way to the right wall. When he is looking to the middle, anyone standing in only the middle section is attackable. Lastly, when looking to the left, Olm is able to attack anyone standing in the middle column all the way to the left wall. A helpful tip is to use third-party client plugins to mark tiles that help illustrate Olm's targeting range. These are the tiles that I would encourage everyone to mark. Please feel free to pause the video to reference these tiles. I will also place an image in the description. These outside tiles indicate the first safe column where Olm cannot see you when he is looking to the middle. These inside tiles indicate the first safe column where Olm cannot see you when looking the opposite direction. For example, this column is the first safe location that Olm cannot see you when he is looking to the right, and vice versa, this column being the first safe location that Olm cannot see you when he is looking to the left. Lastly, this marker is used to illustrate the tile directly in front of the melee hand's thumb. This tile is used for team coordination that we will discuss in the special attack section. We call this tile the thumb tile. Now that we have an understanding for the layout of the room, let's focus on Olm's attacks. Although Olm does have a wide variety, it is super simple as he operates on a very predictable cycle. Olm will conduct 2 auto attacks and then a special attack. It's really that simple. We'll first talk about what is considered an auto attack. Olm has 2 styles of attacks that he can do regardless of the type of phase we are in. We'll call these the basic attack and the prayer orbs. The basic attack is a range or magic attack that will hit all players in Olm's attackable zone. The range attack looks like a small green rock, where the magic attack is a big green blob. We cannot predict which attack he will choose, but he is more likely to use the same attack in a row. So it is best that we change our protection prayer to the one he just attacked with. The other style he can perform on any phase is the prayer orb. Olm will send out a slow moving colored orb that will initially disable our current prayer as well as reducing half of our current prayer points. We must turn on our protection prayers according to the colored orb or the colored message in our chat box. We pray range for the green orb, pray melee for the red orb, and lastly pray magic for the blue orb. If we fail to pray correctly, we will also lose half of our current health. In addition to the basic attack and prayer orbs, Olm can also perform phase-specific auto attacks. At the beginning of the first 2 phases, Olm will rise empowered in one of 3 styles that is indicated in our chat box: Flame, Acid, or Crystal. Each phase will have 2 specific attacks that he can only use while being in that phase. It is important to note that Olm will be able to use any of the attacks while in the last phase. The Acid phase will have a spray and drip attack. The acid spray is an attack where Olm will spit out several pools of acid around the room. Standing on these pools will cause damage per second and will poison you. The drip attack will target one player, causing them to generate acid pools underneath them and every tile the player walks over. Standing still will cause damage over time, so it's important to stay calm and strategically walk to ensure you're in the correct side of the room while not damaging your teammates. Most players find it easier to turn their run off while under this attack. The next phase is the flame phase. The flame phase will have a burn attack and the firewall. For the burn attack, Olm will shoot out a green fireball at one player, causing them to yell, "Burn with me." The targeted player will take 5 damage every few seconds and will have their stats reduced by 2 each time, for a total of 5 hits. At the time of the 5 hits, any players standing on adjacent tiles will also be affected with the burn, causing them to yell, "I will burn with you." This will also reset the timer. The firewall attack is where Olm will shoot out a wall of fire on either side of a player to trap them. If any player is standing on the tile where the wall will appear, they will be moved out of the way. To escape the wall, any player with water spells in the room can click on any fire to douse it, removing the fire, allowing a path for players to escape. After a brief moment, if still trapped inside the wall, players will take upwards of 60 damage. Lastly, Olm has the crystal phase. The crystal phase consists of the red falling crystals and the crystal bombs. For the falling crystal attack, Olm will let out a cry targeting one player with a red aura around them. This player will attract a falling crystal every few seconds, damaging anyone standing on the tile. Very similar to the acid drip, players will need to stay moving. Olm can also shoot out crystal bombs at random locations throughout the room. After a few second delay, the bombs will explode over a radius of 4 tiles. Anyone standing within the 4 tiles will take damage, up to 60, receiving more the closer you are to the bomb. Once again, let's break this down. Olm's auto attacks are the basic, the prayer orbs, or the phase specific attack. Olm has 3 phases, and each phase has 2 attacks. The acid phase has the spray and the drip attack. The flame phase has the burn and firewall attack. And lastly, the crystal phase has the red falling crystal and the crystal bombs. As we mentioned before, Olm attacks on a very predictable cycle. He does the 2 auto attacks and then a special attack. So let's break down Olm's 4 special attacks. The awesome thing about these is that they always appear in the same order. Keep in mind that if Olm's melee hand is clinched, these special attacks will not happen. The first special attack we see is the Crystal Burst. Olm places small crystals underneath every player in the room. A few seconds later, the crystals will burst, dealing damage and shoving any players standing on top of them. At the time of the attack, the melee hand will briefly show a crystal icon hovering over it. The second special attack in the rotation is the lightning attack. Lightning will come from the north and south walls, moving across the room. Any player that is hit by this attack will receive damage, have their overhead prayers disabled, and binded for a short time. Much like the first special, the melee hand will have a lightning icon hovering over it when this attack is performed. The third special attack is the teleport attack. Olm will pair you with another player indicated in your chat box. You and your paired partner will have the same colored glowing aura surrounding your players. This attack requires paired players to stand on the exact same tile at the end of the attack. If players are not, they will be teleported to each other's location, taking damage based on the distance apart. This is where the thumb tile comes into play. Regardless of your location in the room, when this special attack is triggered, it is your expectation to get to the thumb tile. This way, everyone knows where they need to be. Much like the previous 2, the melee hand will show a swirl icon hovering above when this attack happens. This attack is over when a message in your chat box, "The teleport attack has no effect," has been displayed. If you are burning, it is usually best to stand 2 tiles away from the thumb. This way you do not burn your teammates. An advanced technique is to stand 2 tiles away until you see your character say, "Burn with me," then quickly run to the thumb tile, clicking away again as soon as you see the teleport message in your chat box. This will allow you enough time to get away before the next cycle of the burn damage. The fourth and final special attack only happens during the third or final phase. This special attack is the AutoHeal. During this special attack, any damage done to the melee hand will instead heal the hand for the amount dealt. This attack is easily noticed by the hovering infinity icon above the hand. The AutoHeal will last until the next special attack is supposed to happen. Let's take a moment to review the attack cycle. Olm will start by performing 2 auto attacks, then the first special attack, Crystal Burst, will happen. Olm will then perform 2 more auto attacks, then the lightning will happen. Olm will perform 2 more auto attacks, then the teleport will happen. If it is not the final phase, Olm will circle back to the beginning of the cycle. If it is the final phase, Olm will perform 2 more auto attacks, then the AutoHeal will happen, then circling back to the beginning of the cycle. Now that we've broken down and explained all of Olm's attacks, let's focus on the roles each player will be assigned. A typical team composition will consist of 1 meleeer, one Mager, and the rest of the team will be runners. It is advised for new individuals that are learning Olm to start off with the runner role. The runners play a simple but very important role. The objective of the runner is getting Olm's head to turn left or right and completely avoid Olm looking to the middle. Olm will look in the direction where he can see the most players. If damage is being done to the hand on the side of the room the majority of players are on, Olm will fully turn his head in that direction. If damage is not being done, Olm will look to the middle. When Olm is turning his head, he is not dealing damage, so it is important that we keep the head turning as much as possible. We do this by running back and forth between the two middle tiles we indicated earlier. When Olm turns his head to the left, we should be running to the right, and vice versa. By doing this, the runner should never take any damage, as they will always be outside Olm's target range. If players fall behind or click too soon, causing the team to be split between the left and right sides, Olm will look to the middle. As mentioned before, we never want this to happen. We must be reactive, not proactive, meaning we only click when we see Olm's head turn fully to our direction. If Olm does look to the middle, we must reset by having all the runners stand on the mage side. When Olm turns from the middle to the mage side, then we click to the melee side. Placement should always be the number one priority for everyone in the room, especially for runners. If you find yourself taking damage, the best strategy is to avoid panic and prioritize standing on the right side of the room over healing. I know that sounds crazy, but as we mentioned before, if everyone is standing on the correct side, Olm will be turning his head and not dealing damage. This strategy is key when a runner is under the effect of an attack. As we learn, some attacks require us to keep moving. It is important that we continue moving, but stay on the opposite side that Olm is looking, and not forgetting to cross over the room when Olm turns his head towards us. The next role is the Mager. The Mager's responsibility is to stand in Olm's left target range and to act as a tank for the mage side of the room. Typically, players with the highest defensive mage gear will fill this role, although players experienced with skipping special attacks are preferred. Don't worry, we'll talk about mage skipping later in the video. The last role is the Meleeer. The Meleeer's responsibility is to stand in Olm's right target range and to act as a tank for the melee side of the room. Typically, players with the best melee gear will fill this role, although players experienced with skipping special attacks are preferred. We will also talk about melee skipping later in the video. Now that we know each of Olm's attacks, basic team composition, and the roles of each player, let's focus on the flow of the fight. We first begin standing outside the Olm room, equipping our melee gear if we have a stat reducing weapon. All players should have their range, magic, and melee equipment with them. When everyone is ready, we drink our Overload and Prayer Enhance potions. Our Overload boosts our stats every 15 seconds, so we will want to drink 4 doses of brew and 1 restore dose to heal out the 50 Overload damage within the first 15 seconds. When we are ready to start the fight, we will stand at the first tile before walking through the door. We will wait for everyone on our team to be standing at the door, then we will all enter at the same time. This is very important as it sets us up for success when we start the fight. To begin, enter the room and run to the center with Protect for Magic on. When Olm appears, all rolls immediately special attack the melee hand once. Hit or miss, we will then go to our assigned locations. It is important to note that the final phase does operate a bit differently as we have to disable both hands at the same time. Each role has a different job throughout the phase, so let's focus on the first half, beginning with the runners. The runners will immediately run to the mage side, leaving the first 3 tiles closest to Olm empty, as the melee or major will use these when skipping specials. Swap into your mage gear and begin attacking the mage hand. When first learning, prioritize being in the right location over dealing damage to Olm. We wait on the mage side until we see Olm turn his head to the mage side. We then immediately run to the first safe column on the melee side and continue attacking the mage hand. We will continue running back and forth as the head turns until the mage hand is disabled. The player filling the major role will run to the outside marked tile on the mage hand. Players who choose not to skip special attacks will simply stay on this location, attacking the mage hand. Keep in mind that you may be required to move in order to dodge Olm's attacks, but do not move towards the middle. Stay between the marked tile and the outside wall, as this will prevent Olm from looking middle. The only time you will move outside this location is for the teleport attack when you must meet at the thumb tile. Continue attacking until the mage hand is disabled. While the major and runners are attacking the mage hand, the meleeer will stay and target the melee hand. Players who choose not to skip special attacks will simply stay on this location. Keep in mind that you may be required to move in order to dodge Olm's attacks, but do not move towards the middle. Stay between the marked tile and the outside wall, as this will prevent Olm from looking middle. The only time you will move outside this location is for the teleport attack when you must meet at the thumb tile. As mentioned earlier, during the beginning phases, Olm's melee hand can clinch. This will prevent players from attacking the melee hand. During this time, the meleeer will switch into their mage gear. While standing on the marked tile, the meleeer will be able to attack the mage hand with the long range attack style. Continue swapping focus, prioritizing attacking the melee hand as it allows. Once the mage hand has been disabled, all players will immediately target the melee hand. During this half of the phase, positioning is still very important. Players will need to stand in a 1-3-5 formation in front of the hand on the 5 attackable tiles. This is to minimize the spread of the burn attack. Keep in mind that Olm will now perform special attacks for the players who chose to skip during the first half. React accordingly until the melee hand has been disabled. After both hands have been disabled, Olm will disappear for a short period of time. During this time, your screen will begin to shake and crystals will fall from the ceiling, dealing damage in a 3x3 zone. Spread out across the room, dodging the crystals until the room stops shaking. At this point, move towards the melee hand with your special attack weapon equipped. Keep in mind that Olm will now appear on the opposite side of the room. Continue the previous strategy until the final phase. If you've lost count, Olm's final phase is signified by a glowing aura around his head. When we begin the final phase, we must remember that both hands have to be disabled at approximately the same time. All players will focus the melee hand for the first half, maintaining the 1-3-5 formation and dodging Olm's attacks. Our goal is to get the melee hand as close to disabled as possible without killing the hand completely. We stay in this position until we see Olm perform the teleport attack. All players will then meet at the thumb tile. As soon as we see the completed teleport message in our chat box, all players, including the meleeer, will run directly straight to the mage side. The melee will wait until the head turns before returning back to the melee hand. This will skip the first AutoHeal special attack. We will continue the same strategy as the beginning phases until both hands are ready to be disabled at the same time. It is vital that all players in the room are aware of the health of both hands at all times. When both hands are disabled, the head phase will immediately begin. During the head phase, we will equip our ranged gear and evenly divide ourselves into the 3 locations. Players will stand on the north, middle, and south of the room. The northern players will stay between the marked tile and the northern wall. The southern between the south tile and southern wall. And middle section will continue to run the head as we've done throughout the entire fight. It is important to evenly spread throughout the room. Otherwise, Olm will often focus the side with the more players, rather than turning his head. It is advised to assign player locations before reaching the head phase. Just as we have seen earlier in the fight, crystals will now begin to fall from the ceiling, requiring us to dodge the 3x3 zone. When dodging these, remember to stay in our assigned locations by moving east and west, not north and south. Olm will no longer be able to perform special attacks as he no longer has his melee hand, but he will gain the healing pools attack. Olm can now send out blue pools randomly in the room, requiring players to stand on them or receive moderate damage. Olm will then heal himself based on the damage dealt. We will try our best to stand on these, but oftentimes it may be best to ignore them if it requires us to take more damage from the crystals. Continue attacking Olm until his health reaches 0. Understanding Olm's predictable attack cycle allows us to manipulate and change the flow of the fight. This gives us a huge advantage as it can greatly decrease the amount of damage we take. Let's take a few moments to break down and see how simple skipping special attacks really is. Our main objective is to have no one on the side of the room Olm is looking when he is about to perform a special attack. Since Olm cannot see any player, he will then turn his head and skip the attack. Now, in order to do this, we must be able to predict when Olm is going to do the special attack. By counting Olm's attacks, remembering the 2 autos then the special, or we can use a very simple technique based on which way Olm is set. We determine which side Olm is set by looking at the head when we see a special attack happen. By seeing the physical attack or noticing the icon over the melee hand, you'll notice Olm performs the special at the same time he turns his head. Whichever side Olm's head started when he performed the special attack is what set it is. Keep in mind, Olm can also perform a special as he turns his head when it is starting in the middle. We need to identify which direction it was heading. If it started the middle and goes to the mage side, we know it is melee set as it follows the same direction as if the head were to start on the melee side, and vice versa. When we've discovered which set it is, the method to skipping specials is simple. Tank 1 hit, then run to the other side. It is literally that easy. Let's talk about a few tips as the skipping for the mage and melee sides are a little bit different. This all falls back on what we spoke about earlier. When damage is being done to the hand on the side of the room the majority of players are on, Olm will fully turn his head in that direction. If no damage is done, he can look to the middle. Let's keep this in mind and focus on mage skipping first. When we first identify it as Mage Set, the Major will be standing on the far marked tile. When we begin skipping the specials, the Major will no longer be required to stand on the marked tile as damage is being dealt to the mage hand. Since the mage hand is receiving damage, Olm will look left rather than the middle. The Major can now simply move between the 3 middle tiles. An excellent tip to practice during the flame phase is having the Major tank the 1 hit on the middle tile. Since this is the first attackable tile when Olm is looking to the left, his firewall will never trap you. Simply tank the middle hit, then move to the melee side, waiting for the head to turn, and then run back along with the runners to the first mage side tile. Skipping specials is a little different on the melee side. Starting out, we will be standing on the marked ring finger tile. When Olm looks back towards us, we will make our way towards the thumb tile. We will tank 1 hit on the melee side and immediately run to the first safe tile on the mage side. When Olm turns back towards the mage, we will click back on the melee hand. Since we are the only person dealing damage to the melee hand, we must observe whether we hit or not. If our first attack is successful, we can simply stand on the thumb tile until it is time for us to tank the hit and run over. If we miss our first hit, we must immediately run to the marked tile on the ring finger. Otherwise, Olm will look to the middle rather than all the way to the right. This is where terminology like 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 come into play with fast weapons like the whip or Dragon Hunter Lance. 3-to-1 meaning you attack Olm 3 times, Olm attacks you once, then you run over to the mage side. 4-to-1 requires a little more precise timing. Starting out, it is recommended to play it safe and only attack 3 times. If you stay too long on the melee side, Olm will still be able to see you as you run, causing a special attack to occur. For both the Major and Meleeer, when skipping, utilize the empty 3 tiles closest to Olm provided by your team when affected by Olm's attacks. Learning a pattern while under the attack, such as the acid drip or red crystals, is crucial to minimize damage taken. Remember, always make sure you are on the correct side of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the information you'll need to know to successfully complete the Olm fight with your team. Before you leave, I'd like to share a few tips with you as they helped me tremendously when I started learning. Understand you will probably die when you first start, and that is okay. Ideally, we would like to minimize deaths, but everyone has to start somewhere. Use each death as a learning experience. Ask yourself, why did I die? Was I standing in the correct spot? What could I have done differently? Learn from our mistakes. The more you do it, the more it slows down. And what we mean by that is the more experience you gain, the easier the fight becomes. Things start to move a little slower and become easier to understand what is happening. Don't panic. Staying calm and making sure you are in the correct position is one of the best tips when starting out. Don't be afraid to fail. We all have to make mistakes to learn from them. And lastly, have fun with it. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this video helped you understand the Olm fight and guides you in the right direction to learn and gain experience. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them in the comment section below or in our Discord community. If you're looking for a team to raid along with or looking for real-time answers, we raid almost every stream and would love to have you a part of it. The link is in the description below. We'll see you soon.